All right, so I've been thinking about this all weekend on my little VFR project here, which is that I really wanted to incorporate one of those motogadget M units into this bike because I'm kind of honestly in love with the concept of it. It's techie, it's gimmicky. I've been drawing diagrams and going over pros and cons for this build all weekend. Now, I've never used a motogadget anything before, in any of their products. And so the M unit is supposed to allow you to control your entire bike with only 4 or 5 buttons on your handlebars. So it slims down the number of controls on the handlebars, right? That is cool. It also has an integrated alarm system, and it can replace your flasher relay. It also allows you to program hazard lights into your turn signals so they can flash at the same time, programming them to be position lights, parking lights, etc. You can control your headlights, your high beam, low beam with just one button. It allows you to do your brake light modulator, which I like, where the brake light flashes and then goes solid. I like that. It also has a starter relay built into it, so you can eliminate the starter relay on your bike. That's one extra thing, and it sort of minimizes the amount of components on your bike. You can also get rid of your horn relay if you've got one. I don't have a horn relay on the VFR. The M unit is supposed to replace the fuse panel and eliminate a number of relays, but which relays was unclear to me. So I spent time going back and forth from the wiring diagram on my bike, the M unit instruction manual, and online examples of other people's M unit wiring diagrams. After spending some time, I eventually deciphered that the M unit is not a value add for my bike, which is a 2000 Honda VFR 800. It's fuel injected and has an onboard computer, an ECU, and that was a consideration and point of additional time spent determining whether I could even use the M unit on a fuel injected bike, as most of the examples I could find were on carbureted bikes. Eventually, I was able to find some examples of M units on fuel injected bikes, so it is possible. Though I found the modern tech that would be added by the use of the M unit was not really worth the $400 price tag. Of the 5 relays that are on my bike in the stock form, the M unit could only replace 2 of those. The M unit is also supposed to replace the fuse panel, but I found that the labeled inputs and outputs that are on the M unit did not match up well with the items that are actually fused on the VFR. On the VFR, there are fuses feeding power to the radiator fan, the speed sensor, the engine stop sensor, the engine stop relay, and none of those are labeled on the M unit, nor are there instructions at all on how to handle these. And yes, I could search for, and I did, examples of how others had wired these items onto their M unit application, or I could figure it out through testing, but this is all a lot of work, and I didn't see how it would pay off on this bike. I would like to reduce the size of the wiring on my bike, and the M unit is supposed to help with this, but it seems like its application on my bike would be pretty limited and the net gains would be pretty small. If I'm wrong on this, somebody please let me know. I do plan on using some motogadget parts, one of which is the small relays that they make. They make these relays that I can swap out for the stock relays that are much smaller, and that'll help save space on my bike. Because I am planning, this is a custom bike, I'm trying to save space wherever I possibly can. I'm also leaning at this point towards using one of their speedometers. I initially wanted to use their smallest speedometer, which is the Motoscope Mini, but found out that it does not show fuel level or lights for like neutral or high beam, those little indicator lights. I currently have those on the stock bike, and I see no reason to give up those functions just to have a tiny speedo. I really enjoy knowing when I'm in neutral, knowing when my high beam is on, and more importantly, knowing how much fuel is in the bike. That is a modern convenience that I don't want to give up. Their other speedometer, the Motoscope Pro, does have all those functions. And though it's not as small as the Mini, it's still small compared to other options on the market that I could get as an alternative to it. So at the moment, I'm leaning towards using that speedometer. I also like the idea of a brake light modulator. The M unit does have this feature built into it, but motogadget also sells this feature separately that can be wired into the circuit feeding the brake lights, so that when you do press on your brake lights, it will automatically make them flash and go solid. And they sell that for $50. However, this is not crazy tech. It's available in a much cheaper solution. I can get this feature for less than $10. I've been wanting to use the M unit for
years now. It does seem like a cool thing, and I thought about this all weekend and how to apply it to this bike, but I just can't figure out how it helps me.